Hello, everybody. It's your girl, Columbia. How are you? I'm fine. Let's get into it, yo. So, okay, the title of this video is I Turn a Comment into a Video. And I shall as soon as I find the comment because I didn't prepare for this at all. The last live stream I did, I think I don't know that my mic was picking up. Oh, shit. I'm coming through on the live. Sorry, y'all. Didn't mean for that to happen. Anywho, I think it's buried in Comment Wars. So let's go find it. Let's go to Comment Wars. Okay. All right. So, God damn it. I really do forget. I went for like 5 minutes to go find the video and I was just like, fuck it. Let's do it. Do it live. But I was on a particular video. I might have been on Demotivator Opinions channel, known as Tim. And or Michael Rollins, I can't remember, or Rollins. I can't remember that either. You guys know I am no good for remembering names. Like I'll know your face and I can connect it to your name, but if I have to remember the pronunciation of your name, it's got to be like that. So sorry if I'm fucking your shit up, guys. I fuck with you. Anyway, so I left this comment because somebody was on that black victim cult shit. And I don't think that they were personally like they didn't quite know what that was or what it meant. So I wrote, or they didn't know why it was racist. So I decided to leave this comment. And Chrisiousity, if you're out there, I thank you for your comment back. And so I kind of wanted to turn this into a video because it means quite a bit to me. So I'm going to read the comment and then I will add, and I'll probably add some commentary midway through and whatnot. So let's get into it. So let me explain why the black victim cult is racist. Let me be clear. I'm not calling you a racist. Number one, characterizing the black community of over 40 million people lumps all the black people into one mindset. We're different people. We have different experiences and believe in different things. Two, there's no singular black community. Right? There's thousands of different black communities across the United States and the world who all have different social, political, economic, and religious needs. What a predominantly African-American community in Raleigh, North Carolina needs is different from what a predominantly is going to be, in some ways, at the very least, different from what a predominantly African-American community in San Francisco, California is going to need. Now, why is it racist? It's racist for several reasons. The cult, just the idea of it being a cult. Just because African Americans have a certain view about how history has affected them doesn't mean that they're brainwashed into believing that, right? Or believing something that isn't necessarily true. I'm losing my place a little bit here because I'm thinking ahead. I'm thinking about other shit and I'm not like there. So let's get back on track, girl. Are there black people that believe in things that are out of date or outright false? Yeah. I mean, I can speak to that. There are certainly plenty of African Americans who have glommed on to things like Afrocentrism and the Moorish philosophy, if you will. I'm being very generous calling it a philosophy. And so, of course, there are black people who believe shit that is bullshit or is out of date. But that doesn't mean that they represent the totality of black voices in the United States. It's more of a spectrum of thought than it is black people believe X. So when Occupy Wall Street, or well, let me start. It's racist because when Occupy Wall Street came about, when the Tea Party came about, when organic political movements come about, we don't immediately brand them as some kind of cult and dismiss them. And when I say we, I mean the media, society, individuals, government, businesses. We attempt to figure out what their issues are and why they exist. We don't just brand them as, oh, you believe something different than me, then you're in a cult and I don't fuck with you. It's racist for several reasons, but primarily it's racist because the phrase is really used to attempt to shut down a conversation or to shut down criticism or to poison the well. Again, I'm not saying that you or even necessarily a person who talks about the black victim cult is necessarily racist. But here's an example. If I came up to you and said, hey, dude, I just read this book about white supremacy and the social contract, and the author had some really good points. In particular, I'm talking about Charles Mills' The Racial Contract. I had to look back at my bookcase because I didn't want to fuck the title up. And some of those points that I really kind of agreed with were, okay, well, a lot of the major Enlightenment authors weren't the biggest fans of Black people. And so in authoring the ideas of how the social contract works, of who is entitled to what the social contract brings, and in fact, who are signatories to the social contract, Black people aren't included in that. And you say to me as a response, well, you're part of the Black victim cult now. The phrase is generally dismissive, derisive, or deflecting, or deflecting. It's dismissive because you aren't actually engaging with the argument I'm making. You're not saying, well, perhaps that could be the case, but if you look at Locke here, or if you look at Rousseau here, then you'll find that that's not that they did have in mind Black people as signatories to the social contract. Instead, you're basically saying, I believe you to be of a particular mindset, one that I don't agree with. And so all of your points, research, facts, observations, and conclusions are immediately incorrect and thus valid. Something can be incorrect, right? You can be fundamentally incorrect about something, but the points that you're trying to make still be valid. But not only are you incorrect about your conclusions, but your points are invalid. Again, to make it clear, I'm not calling anyone a racist. I'm just saying you in an example. The phrase attempts to paper over over the issues of African-American communities by saying, if you believe that Black people have suffered in the United States because they're Black, you're brainwashed. This isn't engaging with the arguments that Black people are making about the treatment of our people in the United States. This is about shutting down discussion about whether or not these issues even exist, which you find is a common thing amongst, particularly on YouTube, but I am sure across the internet, and I'm sure it's bled over into the 3D world in terms of people want that singular phrase that's going to stop you from talking, because they don't really want to have to engage with what you're saying. Again, we're not talking about engaging, we're talking about dismissing. And it's generally racist because if a Black person wants to engage in a conversation about an uncomfortable topic, this is meant to shut them down. This isn't meant to even disprove what they're saying, right? You cannot disprove anything that anyone is saying by saying, well, you're in a cult, right? Does the fact that Jesus was basically cultivating a cult mean that loving thy neighbor or treating people the way that you want to be treated are invalid principles? No, right? That can be divorced from what it means to be in a cult. But you're not trying to engage. Again, I repeat, you're not trying to engage. You're trying to shut people down. It's racist to imply that Black people only see themselves as victims of history, because, and why it's racist is because it assumes the views of millions of Black people. You can't possibly know what the views of every single Black person in this country are, nor could you even know the views of all the Black people in a particular community. So to assume that all Black people think the same way, act the same way, feel the same way is fundamentally racist. Right, because now you've lumped us all into a singular group, as opposed to dealing with Black people and Black issues as individual people, with dealing with individuals as individual people, and dealing with Black issues as issues, right? As opposed to, oh, you Black people are just whinging and complaining again. So it's racist because it implies that when a Black person does want to talk about the connections between slavery, Jim Crow, and the present day, that they're brainwashed into doing so. Not that they're doing it of their own volition, not because they've read, a lot, or they've researched it a lot and they're able to make those connections. Both, there are weak correlations between the treatment of African Americans from 1619 to now. There are strong correlations between the treatment of African Americans between then and now, and how damn you, traffic. There are both weak and strong correlations that can be made about the treatment of African Americans, as well as how law, how perception, how many other things have affected Black people throughout our history, particularly in the United States, but it's a worldwide issue. So it's racist because it assumes that there are no facts, there are no observations, there are no conclusions from anyone that could prove that there's a direct link between the treatment of African Americans from 1619 to present. And there are plenty of authors who can, I mean, like I said, if you're interested, Charles Mills, The Racial Contract, does a really great job of showing you how, and particularly when we're talking about the social contract, how the issues of Black personhood, how they start off in the slave era, and how those issues carry over into segregation, and how they carry over into the modern era. I think that's it, y'all. The kind of real kicker about the whole thing is that it's racist to white people, right? The idea of the Black victim cult is actually kind of racist to white people, because it assumes that white people don't know the different, don't know any Black people, so thusly have never had any interaction with these types of ideas, and B, it assumes that white people are clueless about Black people and have absolutely no idea where Black people come from, how they came to be, what their political issues are. And so instead of having you engage with those issues, you poor little white person with your tiny little brain, you can't possibly engage with these issues, so just call them a victim cult and move on. Instead of trying to get white people to engage with the idea of with these particular criticisms, or these observations, depending on what we're talking about, you are attempting to shut down any conversation, right? Which means you kind of don't want white people to learn any better, right? You don't want them to know that, okay, these Black people face a certain set of issues, and they are correlated to issues that have happened, that started in the past, and what can I do as a human being to make the situation better, right? You're just kind of saying, fuck them. White people don't have to engage with Black people's issues. They're in a victim cult. They believe themselves victims, so you don't have to try to understand what's going on. And that's racist to white people, because just like assuming that all the Black people are in a victim cult when we talk about the issues of slavery, segregation, and their impact on the modern world, it's racist to assume that all the white people don't understand that those issues are actual issues. It treats white people with the same sort of monolithic view that it treats Black people, and that's racist. At the very least, it's generalizing. But I believe generalizing leads to racism. You have to treat people as individuals. Humans are what they are. And just because a person is Black or white, or from, has an Asian background, or has a South American or a Central American or a Mexican background, just because a person is Haitian, doesn't mean you can assume that what that person thinks. You don't know, right? The best way to find out what an individual thinks is to engage with them. And I would really suggest that, that white people, that people of European descent, because I never liked the idea of Black people or white people. I always thought those were weird terms that weren't aptly describing anyone or anything. I think that it's incumbent upon you to do one thing. That's understand your own history, right? I see all the time. I see, what I would assume. I know there are Black people who are in the same fucking boat. I know there are probably Asian people and Mexican people and people of Central American, South American descent that are of the same boat. right? Native American that are in the same boat. They don't quite understand what the history of their people is. And so they tend not to want to talk about it. It tends to be, I don't want to do it, because they don't really know what's going on there. So I think that if you want to engage with African Americans on how they feel and about their position in the United States or their position in any other country, and you want to engage with that, and you have some arguments to bear and you have some counter arguments to bear, I think, yeah, of course, try to have that engagement. But when you say someone is just in a cult, you aren't doing the work to really determine whether their ideas are right or wrong. You're just sort of telling them they're in a cult. You're just shutting it all down so that you don't have to deal with it. Try not to make it a shouting match. But there's always, no matter what I say, no matter what anyone else says, there's always counterpoints. There's always counter arguments. And you've got to use your intellect to determine what those counter arguments are and what they aren't. So that's me turning a comment into effectively an audio recording. I think I did pretty shittily, but that's okay because it's YouTube. It's not like I'm on television, so it's not that big a deal. I'm never going to be PewDiePie or PewDiePie. It's not, to me, like, if I make 10 subs, I will be through the roof. Okay, that's I have a very, very low expectation for this. So I'm not super like, oh well, I've got to fucking appeal to everybody and their mama because I want the subs. I don't give a fuck. But I just thought it was kind of an interesting concept, and I've been seeing it going around in comment sections, particularly ones where we're talking about Black people and the treatment of Black people and all that stuff. And yeah, that's about it. And, before my comment disappears, wanted to kind of turn into a video, so I couldn't. Haha. So I am out for the day, probably. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. If you haven't, then you know where to find me. My comment section is always open, and I will engage with those people who actually want to engage in a conversation with me. All right, I will talk to you later. I hope all is well. Good night, my babies.